Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We are holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav. We'll be learning today Mirat Hashem Daf Nun Zayin Amid Beis. We're in the middle of Hilchos Rosh Hashanah and we pick up today on Daf Nun Zayin Amid Aleph in Siman Tov Kuf Pei Hey with Sif Daled. Says the Mechaber, Acher Tekeya V'loi Shaliach Tzibur. Somebody else should be the Baal Tekeya, someone other than the Baal Musaf. The one who's going to daven Musaf for the Amud should preferably not be the Baal Tekeya. Why? Says the Mechaber Kedei Shalai is Balbel. We know that the Baal Musaf, we blow Shofar in middle of Tfilas Musaf. Either according to Nusach Sfard, we blow in middle of the Shtil Shmona Esrei and during the Chazaras Hashatz. According to Nusach Ashkenaz, we blow only during the Chazaras Hashatz. However, either way, we're going to have Tekiyas during the Chazaras Hashatz. And therefore, we preferably don't want the Baal Musaf to be the Baal Tekeya. We're afraid that if he has to break during the Chazaras Hashatz to blow Shofar, he might then get confused, lose his place, maybe forget the Nusach, start davening somewhere else. We want him to have his mind on the Tefillah and not to have his mind on the Tekiyas. Therefore, continues the Mechaber, if he is absolutely certain that he will be able to continue the davening properly after the tekiyas with no problem, then then he is able to blow shofar. Says the Mishnah Berurah, nice cut Yud Gimel, Kedei Shalai is Balbal. The reason we don't want the Baal Musaf to be the Baal Tekeya is we don't want him to become confused. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Aval hefsik loy heavy. You might have thought that there's a different problem. You might have thought that pausing, breaking in middle of the Chazaras Hashatz in order to blow shofar, maybe that constitutes a hefsik in the Shmona Esrei. That, Chavetz Chaim says, is not an issue. Aval hefsik loy heavy. Why? Tehu chashuv tzarech hatfila. Because since the blowing of the shofar is part of the Seder hatfila, it's part of the davening, therefore it's not a hefsik. She'elu atekiyos nikbu'u al Seder habrachos, because those kailos of the shofar that we blow are specifically intended to be after Zechrinus, Malchias, and Shofars. Malchias, Zechrinus, and Shofars. And therefore it's part of the Seder HaTfilah and it's not a hefsik. I was cutting you daled. V'emuhu muftach, if the Baal Musaf is certain that he will be able to continue his davening in the proper way and he will not become confused, then he can blow shofar. Says the Chavetz Chaim, V'im einay muftach. Now, how about if he's not so certain that he will be able to? But v'leka acher sheyedeh l'skaya. But there is nobody else available to be a Baal Tekeya. So what should you do then? Yesh omrim, there are those that say, Deba'ifin zeh lo yiska ad achar hatfilah. Some say that it's a real problem. If the Baal Musaf is afraid that if he breaks in the middle of the Chazaras Hashatz to blow shofar, it's going to confuse him and he will not be able to continue davening properly, then cancel the kailos that we usually do in the middle of Chazaras Hashatz and blow additional kailos after davening, after the Chazaras Hashatz, to make up for them. The Choshkein, says the Chavetz Chaim, this is certainly an eitzah, you could certainly do this, if you already had the tekiyas before Musaf, so you already had enough tekiyas that people were really yotzah the mitzvah of tekiyas shofar. They already heard enough kailos to be yotzah the mitzvah. So okay, so you won't have the kailos in the middle of the davening. You'll have it at the end of davening. That's the opinion of some. However, there are others that say she'em ein sham acher, that if there's nobody else able to blow shofar, yuchal l'skaya al seder habrachos, then the shliach tzibur can blow shofar in the middle of the Chazaras Hashatz, according to the order of the brachas of Musaf, Malchias, Zechrinus, and Shofars. Afal pi she'ein muftach, even though he's not 100% certain that he'll be able to continue davening properly. Why? Very interesting reason. The yesh loy livtayach, because he should have betachon, he should have faith, shemen hashamayim yisayu lasos kahagid. Since he's the only one that's able to blow the shofar, and he's the shliach tzibur, so then he's doing the ratzon habayre. He's doing the avodah shamayim. He's doing what the Rebbeinu Shalom needs him to do. So therefore, he should have betachon that the Rebbeinu Shalom will help him, and when he finishes blowing shofar, he'll be able to continue the davening, he'll pick up at the right place, he'll know the nusach, and he won't have any problem. And finally, the Chavetz Chaim says, "V'mispalal mitoich hasiddur v'hamachzer." If the shliach tzibur has a machzer in front of him, then l'chuli alma dinoi kemuftach. Then he's considered muftach. If you have a machzer open in front of you, why should you be so concerned that you're going to get confused and you're going to lose the place? You have a machzer in front of you, so you know. I'm blowing shofar over here, and then I have to pick up over there. The nusach, okay, could be the nusach isn't even ma'akiv. So if you get the nusach a little bit wrong, it's not the end of the world. Eif katan tezvav, the mechaber said that if he's muftach, if he's certain that he'll be able to continue properly, rashoy l'skaya, then the shliach tzibur is allowed to blow shofar. Afilu yesham acher, even if there's somebody else available to blow shofar. So the Chavetz Chaim is telling you that the mechaber means over here, if the Baal Musaf is certain that the interrupting the Chazaras Hashatz for blowing shofar is not going to confuse him, then he could blow shofar even if there's somebody else available to blow shofar. You don't have to say, oh, the halacha is that it's better if somebody else blows shofar. No, if he's muftach, if he's certain, then he could blow shofar. The tekiah lo chashiv hefsek klal v'chanal, because like we said earlier in Eis Katan Yud Gimel, there's no halachic problem with him blowing shofar. It's not considered a hefsek. The only problem is we're afraid he's going to get confused. If he's certain that he won't get confused, then he can blow shofar. Now says the Ramah, Hagah, V'davka tekiyos shal seder hatfila aser l'shliach tzibur l'skaya. When the mechaber said in the beginning of Sif Daled, achar tekeya v'lo shliach tzibur, when the mechaber said that it's better somebody else should do the shofar blowing, not the Baal Musaf, says the Ramah, that's only negeya to the kolos that we blow after Malchiyas Zechronos and shofars in middle of the Chazaras Hashatz or in middle of the Shemona Esrei. That's when there's a concern. Aval tekiya shetoikin miyushiv, but the kolos, the first kolos that we blow before Musaf, Tahainu Kaidim Shemispalal and Musaf, those are the kolos that we blow before Musaf, Mutar L'Shliach Tzibur L'Skaya. The Baal Musaf can certainly blow those kolos, and explains the Chavetz Chaim and Eis Katan Tezayin, Desham Chayshinon Shiyis Balbal, because it's on the kolos that we blow in middle of Musaf where we have the concern that the Baal Musaf might become confused, and he won't be able to properly return to the davening. But for the kolos that are blown before Musaf, over there we have no issue. So certainly the Baal Musaf is allowed to blow those kolos. Continues the Ramah, 3 lines from the bottom near the end. Let's say we have a different person, we have a Baal Tekeya who is going to blow the Tekiyas de Meyushiv, the kolos before Musaf, and it's not the Baal Musaf. If it's not the Baal Musaf that's blowing the Tekiyas de Meyushiv, the kolos before Musaf, rather it's a different person who's the Baal Tekeya, Roi, then it would be proper sha'oisai ha'tekeya, that Baal Tekeya who blows the first kolos, the Tekiyas de Meyushiv, yiska gamkein al seder habrachas. He should also be the Baal Tekeya who blows the kolos in middle of Musaf. Why? Because we know we have a rule, ki ha'maskil b'mitzvah, the one who begins a mitzvah, oimrim loy gemar. He's the one who we say, you started the mitzvah, you finished the mitzvah. So the one who made the brachas and blew the original kolos before Musaf, he should also be the Baal Tekeya who blows all the rest of the kolos, the ones during Musaf and the ones after Musaf. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Eis Katan Yud Zayin, Oimrim Lo Gemar, we tell the Baal Tekeya who began the shofar blowing that he should finish off the shofar blowing. In a locale, in a place where they have the minig that there's one Baal Tekeya who blows the Tekiyas de Meyushiv, and then there's a different Baal Tekeya who blows the kolos in middle of Musaf, the Tekiyas de Me'umid, Or there's another minig, lechalek gam hastarim. In some places they divide up the different kailos that are blown al seder habrachas. Malchiyos leechad. They give the tekiah shvarm trua tekiah, tekiah shvarm tekiah trua tekiah that's blown after malchiyos. They give that set to one individual. Zichraynos la'acher. They give the set of kailos that are blown after zichraynos to another Baal Tekeah, and then they give the set after Shofrais to a third or a fourth Baal Tekeah. Yasu Kim and Hagam, you should follow that minig. Ki Yisrael Kedoshim Heim, Klal Yisrael are Kedoshim, they're holy, Umechabev in HaMitzvahs, and they love mitzvahs. Why are they doing this? Why are they dividing it up to different people? Because they're being mechabed different people to do the mitzvah. Everybody is looking for that covet. Everybody is looking for that mitzvah. They want to be the one to do the mitzvah. So if they have a zam minig to divide it up, then you're allowed to divide it up. Continues the Rama on the bottom line. Naihagin, we have a minig, lahakrois lifnei tekeah, to call out in front of the Baal Tekeah, seder hatekiyos, the order of the shofar blowing, mila b'mila, word by word, kedei shelo yiteh, so that the Baal Tekeah should not make an error, v'nochainhu, and this is proper. That's the minig of the makri. We know that on Rosh Hashanah, when we do the shofar blowing, there's a makri who stands next to the Baal Tekeah, and he calls out, Tekiah, shvarim trua, Tekiah. Why is that? Because the Baal Tekeah has his mind on the shofar blowing, the proper placement of the shofar, maybe the kavanas of shofar, and he not necessarily does he have his mind on the proper order, exactly what he has to blow next, what he's up to, even though certainly he should have that in mind as well. He should have a machzor in front of him. I know when I blow shofar, I make sure I have a machzor in front of me, and I try to pay attention exactly where I'm up to. But we have a makri who calls out to him. That way he could have his mind on the shofar blowing, and the makri is the one that's telling him what to blow. Now the Ramah says over here, noihagin. This is only a minig to have a makri. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cotton yud ches lahakrois. Very interesting. The Chavetz Chaim says hamispalel shachris, the Baal Shachris, the one who davened shachris for the Amid, makra lahatoikeah. He should be the makri. Continues the Chavetz Chaim, however, uvemakom sheyesh moirit tzedek, in a place where there's a rav, in a place where there's a paisik, a moirit tzedek, who makri, then he should be the makri. And the truth is, the reason that the moirit tzedek should be the makri is because he's the one who's deciding on what should be blown next. And that means that if a shaila comes up, if we're not sure, was that a proper tekiah, was that a proper shvarim, was that a proper shvarim trua, he's the one who's going to decide, do we have to go back, do we have to repeat, do we not? So if there's a moirit tzedek, if there's a paisik, he should be the makri. Gam tekiah rishayna, even the very first tekiah, yikra lefanov, the makri should call it out to him, even though there doesn't seem to be too great a concern that there should be a mistake. It's the very first koil. How are you going to get mixed up? We know that the shofar blowing begins with a tekiah, so you might think there's no reason to call out the first tekiah. Says the Chavetz Chaim, no, the makri should call out everything. Now we have a very interesting piece of Chavetz Chaim over here. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Pamachas, it once happened, Lo hayu yichaylen l'skaya, that they weren't able to blow the shofar. And we've seen this happen, and it's happened to me as well. Sometimes you take the shofar, and with all your practice and with all your know-how and everything else, somehow you pick up the shofar and all you get is air, and you're not getting any sound. So Pamachas, it once happened, they weren't able to get a sound out of the shofar. V'hafach ha-shofar, they turned the shofar over, and they called out into the open end, the wide end of the shofar, V'hi noyam, the pasuk V'hi noyam Hashem Elokeinu aleinu, Masi yadeinu kainenu aleinu, Masi yadeinu kaineneu. V'shuv yachlu l'skaya, and guess what? The reading of that pasuk into the shofar, now suddenly the Rebbeinu Shalom gave siyata d'shmaya, and now they were able to blow shofar. This is brought down from the Magen Avraham in the name of the Maharil. Va'ayin b'dogel meravava. The Chavetz Chaim says, take a look at the Sefer Dogel meravava. Shezeu dafka b'tekiyos demu'umid. You could only do this if you experience a problem by the tekiyos demu'umid, by the tekiyos in middle of musaf. Then, if you have a problem with the shofar, you could be mafsik, and you could say v'hinayam Hashem Elokeinu into the shofar. Avo b'tekiyos demiyushiv, but by the tekiyos demiyushiv, when you first begin the shofar blowing, so the Baal Tekeh just made the brachas, and now he has to blow shofar. So if he finishes the brachas, and now he tries to blow and he can't blow, now you want him to say v'hinayam into the shofar, that would be a hefsik between the bracha and the mitzvah that you can't do. Aval b'tekiyos demiyushiv, by the first kailos before musaf, have you hefsik gomer by bracha l'tekiyah. To say v'hinayam into the shofar would be making a hefsik between the brachas and the mitzvah. You can't do that. V'ayin b'shari tshuva, he says, take a look in the shari tshuvas of Katan Zayin, shemiyashev k'tzas davar zeh, where he says, okay, it could be that you could do it then as well. Nevertheless, the Chavetz Chaim says that in his, he says, humble opinion, it's not worthwhile to do this. Better, you should not risk making a hefsek. Continues the Chavetz Chaim, let's say you try blowing the shofar and it's not going. So you want to put down that shofar and you want to blow a different shofar. You don't have to make another bracha even though you're switching shofars. Since the shofar was there in front of you, and you should have the shofar, all the shofars that you're going to possibly use should be in front of you when you make the bracha. Since this shofar was there on the bima, we could say that the default position is that the Baal Tekeh had his mind on all the shofars, that they're all available to him for use. Hamakrev HaTekeh, the one who's calling out the kailos, the makri and the Baal Tekeh, roy lahem, it is proper for them, sheyilmedu heitev dinei hashofar, they should learn hilchas shofar well, v'seder atekiyos, and they should be very familiar with the seder atekiyos, with what has to be blown when. Exactly when do you blow what? Because sometimes it happens for one reason or another. Neifel tos b'fi hamakre. Sometimes the makri makes a mistake. I've seen this happen. Sometimes the makri makes a mistake. He calls out the wrong kail. So the Baal Tekeh himself also has to know what he has to blow when. So if the makri calls out the wrong thing, the Baal Tekeh could be quiet, don't blow, look at the makri, point to the sitter. You make sure that you're also aware of what's going on. Sometimes the Baal Tekeh is the one who makes a mistake. So the makri has to be very well versed in what has to be done. And the Baal Tekeh and the makri have to know what to do. If you keep blowing further, or do you have to go back to the beginning of the set? So you have to be very familiar with the halachas and very familiar with the proper order of the shofar blowing to make sure that there are no mistakes. Sifhei, top line, nun zayin amid beis. Hanoitol schar l'skaya shofar b'Rosh Hashanah. Somebody who receives payment, somebody who takes payment to be about the Tekeh on Rosh Hashanah. Oy kidei lehispalel, or he takes payment, he's paid to be the shliach tzibur. Oy letargem, or the meturgaman. We know that it used to be the procedure when the Rav was giving a drasha, the Rav would kind of whisper the words of the drasha to a meturgaman, to like a go-between, and the go-between would say it very loud to the tzibur. Sometimes it was also the job of the meturgaman to expand upon what the darshan is really saying. But somebody takes money, if somebody receives payment to be about the Tekeh, or to be a shliach tzibur, or to be a meturgaman on Shabbos and Yom Tov, eina roya me'osei schar siman bracha. The Mechaber says he will not see a siman bracha from that money. Exactly what that means, not to see a siman bracha, is a question. It's a matter of dispute. Some say it means that whatever you use that money for, if you invest that money into something, it will not grow. There will not be any bracha on that money. Others say not only that, but you'll lose the principle as well. The problem over here is, it's not so much that it's a problem to be paid to be about Tekeah. The problem is that it looks like you're taking Schar Shabbos and Schar Yom Tov. You're not allowed to pay somebody for work that he does on Shabbos and Yom Tov, and that's what it looks like. It looks like he's being paid for Shabbos and Yom Tov. That's why earlier in Hilchos Shabbos, the Mechaber says that if you do Havlah, if you say that I'm hiring you for work that you're doing during the week and on Shabbos, etc., etc., so there's an answer that it's not clear, doesn't look so much like it's Schar Shabbos. You're being paid for a month's work. Says the Mishnah Berurah, he's cutting you a test. Ain't a raya in le'el b'simin shinvav sifhei of a Mishnah Berurah Sham, where this is expanded upon. Okay. Siman Tavkuf Peivav, Dinei Shofar Shel Rosh Hashanah, the halachas that apply to the shofar, and not the shofar blowing so much, but to the shofar specifically on Rosh Hashanah, Ubay Chav Gimel Seifim, and here we have 23 Seifim. Says the Mechaber Sif Aleph, Shofar Shel Rosh Hashanah, the shofar that you're going to use to blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah, Mitzvasai B'Shal Ayel, the mitzvah is that it should be the shofar of a ram, the kafuf, and it should be bent. It should not be straight, it should be bent. Ubedieved, but bedieved, if that's not what you have, if you don't have a shofar of an ayel that's bent, ubedieved kol ha-shofaros kisherim, all shofaros are kosher, bein pshutim, whether they're straight, bein kefufim, or whether they're bent. But umitzvasa b'kfufim yosem im b'pshutim. However, it is a greater mitzvah to use a bent shofar than it is to use a straight shofar. Okay, let's see the Mishnah Berurah here. Mishnah Berurah is cut in Aleph. Shal Rosh Hashanah. With this halacha, we're addressing specifically the shofar that we blow on Rosh Hashanah. La'afuke, this stands in contrast to Batainus, to the shofar that you're going to use to blow on a fast day. Because let's remember, as we learned in Hilchos Tainus, says the Chavetz Chaim, Shetoikin Gam Kein B'Shofar. There's an Indian to blow shofar whenever you have a Tainus on a tzara, whenever the tzibur is fasting because of a tzara, because of problems, because of troubles that are befalling the tzibur, you're supposed to blow a shofar. So on a Tainus, Toikin Gam Kein B'Shofar, when we also blow a shofar, Loi Be'inon Shal Ayel. For a Tainus, we don't need it to be a shofar of a ram, the kafuf, and we also don't need it to be bent. Ice cotton bays, bishal ayil. The main mitzvah, there's a hider mitzvah, there's a mitzvah to blow a shofar shal ayil, of a ram. Why? L'zeicher akedas Yitzchak, because the shofar of an ayil is a reminder of the ayil of the Akedah of Yitzchak. What happened by the Akedah? Avram Avinu was prepared to bring Yitzchak on the Mizbeach as a carbon, and the Rebbeinu Shalom said, no, I don't need you to shech Yitzchak. Instead, an ayil came. The Gemara says that ayil was waiting from Sheshis Yimei Bereshis. There was an ayil, v'hine ayil achar nechaz basvach b'karnov. There was an ayil that was stuck over there in the bushes by its horns, and that ayil became the carbon in the place of Yitzchak Avinu. So we want to create a remembrance to the Maisa of the Akedah on Rosh Hashanah. So the Rebbeinu Shalom should remember us with Rachmanus and the schus of the Akedah. So we blow in the shofar shal ayil. Says the Mishnah Berurah, ubechlal zeh, included in an ayil is gam kivsa nekeva, is also a young female sheep. An ayil is an adult ram, and a ram is a male. A kivsa nekeva is a female sheep. It's a young animal, less than 13 months old. So really over here, there are two things that are different than an ayil. An ayil is an adult. It's an older animal, a fully grown animal. And an ayil is a male. A kivsa nekeva is not fully grown. It's an immature animal. It's a young animal. And it's a nekeva, not a zachar. Yet, that's also considered to be included in ayil, and that also would serve as a remembrance to the Akedah. And we actually have a raya from that, from a halacha we learned earlier in Hilchos Rosh Hashanah, where the Mechaber said that there's a meaning to eat rosh keves. Was it the Mechaber or was it the Ramah? It's the Mechaber. In Taf Kuf Pei Gimel Sif Beis, Nun Heyom Beis. Eichlam rosh keves. we eat the head of a keves. Why do we eat the head of a keves? Loimer niel roish v'loy zanav, and also v'zecher le'eloi shel Yitzchak. So you see that a keves, a young animal, can serve as a reminder to an ayil. So by shofar also, if you take the horn of a kivsa nekeva, that's also included in an ayil. Ella, however, continues the Chavetz Chaim, the mahadrin beyoser noyagin lachzar acher shel ayil dafka. The mahadrin look to get a shofar shel ayil. To hu zecher tvei la'ayil shel Yitzchak. Because certainly if you could bring the shofar of an ayil, that's a greater remembrance to the ayil shel Yitzchak that a kivsa is. And Ois Cotton Gimel, the Mechaber said it should be kafuf, it should be bent. Why? Why do we want a bent shofar? Siman, because that acts as a siman, as a sign, sheyichbefu libam lamakim. That on Rosh Hashanah, on Yom Adin, we have to see to it to bend our hearts to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Like the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, Aseh ritzayncha kirtzaynoi, make your will like the Rebbeinu Shalom's will. So that means that we're bending our will to the Rebbeinu Shalom's will. So we want to blow in a shofar kafuf, a bent shofar. Ais cotton dalit, ubediyevet kala shofaros. The Mechaber said that bediyevet, post facto, whatever shofar you have, if you don't have a shofar shal ayil and it's kafuf, whatever shofar you have is okay. Ritzayin Aloymar, what the Mechaber wants to say over here is, afilu shal shar behemais chayos, even if it's from any other kind of animal, domesticated animal, or a chaya, or a wild animal, a non-domesticated animal. Now we're going to see later on, it doesn't really mean any animal or any chaya. There are animals and chayas that you cannot use their shofar, but any one of the types of animals that are kosher. When we come makom, nevertheless, says the Chavetz Chaim, b'yesh lo shofar shal tayish ve'ez, if you have the horn of a male goat, that's a tayish, the aiz, or a female goat, yakdimenu l'shofar shel ye'elim, that would take preference over the shofar of a yo'el, which I believe is translated either as an ibex or a hart. Hu min chaya, these are types of non-domesticated animals. Usha'or chayas, other non-domesticated animals. So it's better to use a goat, either male or female, than it is to use a chaya, to hu karov lemin se yoiser, because male or female goats are considered closer to the family of sheep and rams more than these chayas are. Kediksiv, we have a raya in this in the pasuk where it says say kisavim v'sei izim. We seem to compare in the pasuk kisavim and izim, sheep and goats. And therefore, with a sheep or a goat, you still have a zecher, a reminder for the ayil of the akedah. Ois cotton hay. The Mechaber said, mitzvah b'kfufim, there's a bigger mitzvah to use a bent shofar. Ritzayin loymar, what the Mechaber wants to say is, the lav dafka ba'ayil, not only by the shofar shal ayil do we try to use a kafuf, ela afilu b'shar behemos v'chayos, even if you're using the shofar of a different animal or a different non-domesticated animal, gam kein kafuf aduf mi pashut, you should also try to find one that's kafuf, that's bent, and not straight. So not only is it a mitzvah to use kafuf by the shofar shal ayil, if you're using a shofar of a different type of animal, you also should try to use one that's kafuf, one that's bent. V'hine, says the Chavetz Chaim, v'hine ha-mechaber sasam v'loi bier. In a certain way, the Mechaber wrote his language over here, and it's a little bit closed, v'loi bier. He didn't explain it fully. Ayil pashut. Let's say you have a shofar shal ayil, but it's straight, it's pashut, it's not kafuf. V'kafuf mishar minim. But then you also have another shofar from a different type of animal, not from an ayil. But that shofar is bent. That shofar is kafuf. Which one, eze mehen oduf? Which shofar is better? Is it better to use the shofar of the ayil, which is straight, or the shofar of a different type of animal, which is kafuf, which is bent? Which one takes precedence? Okay, so from the Mechaber we don't know. However, says the Chavetz Chaim, maskanas roiv ha-paiskim, it is the conclusion of most of the paiskim, the malas kafuf odif, that kafuf, a bent shofar, takes precedence over a shofar shal ayil that's not bent. Lefikach, therefore, im nizdamen loy shel yoel kafuf, let's say you have the shofar of an ibex, which is bent, v'shel keves pashut, or you have the shofar of a sheep, which is straight, and we said usually a sheep would take precedence over an ibex, but over here, since the one of the ibex is bent and the one of the sheep is straight, yiska b'shel ye'elim v'kafuf. You should blow with the one of the yael that is bent. Why is this? Why is it that bent takes precedence over ayel? Why? Explains the Chavetz Chaim, Tikun Rabbanon liskaya b'kafuf. Because this idea that you should blow in a shofar kafuf, in a bent shofar, that we find in Dina de Talmuda. We find that concept mentioned in Shas. So that's what we call a Tikun Takana de Rabbanon. Siman, because that acts as a siman, sheyichbefu libam lamakim b'tfila, that we should bend and humble our hearts when we approach the Rebbeinu Shalom in tefillah on Rosh Hashanah. Masha'en ken shofar shal ayil, but this idea that there's a mile in using a shofar shal ayil, ain't no tikkun rabbanon liskaya dafka b'shal ayil. We don't find that in Dina de Talmuda. We don't find in Shas that the Chazal said that you should dafka blow in a shofar shal ayil. We don't find that. Ela minig. Rather, it's only a minig. Shenagu kol Yisrael mayolam l'zecher hakeda. That for Dirshu already, the Klal Yisrael, they have a minig to blow in the shofar shal ayil as a zecher to the hakeda. But it's not a takana d'Rabbanan. Masha'en came the idea of a kafuf, that's already mentioned in Shas by Chazal. V'ika b'zeh mitzvah bin amuvcher. It's certainly a mitzvah bin amuvcher to use a shofar shal ayil. When we come up, nevertheless, kasva ha'mefarshim, the mefarshim right, the gamba zeh yesh al kol panim dina de hider mitzvah. While it's true that the concept of shofar shal ayil is not a takana d'Rabbanan, it still is a hider mitzvah to use a shofar shal ayil, val kain. And since we give it the status of hider mitzvah, im mevakshim mimenu lahaisef al shofar shal ayil, if the shofar salesman wants to charge you more money for a shofar shal ayil, so in order to get a shofar shal ayil, you have to spend more money. Yosef at shlish, you should spend 1/3 more to get a shofar shal ayil as opposed to getting a different kind of shofar. Okay, now mavur lekaman b'siman taf reish nun vav, like we're going to see later on in siman taf reish nun vav, that there's always this inyan of hider mitzvah. Hider mitzvah, you spend extra money up to a shlish. So the din of shofar shal ayil is considered a hider mitzvah, and therefore you should spend up to 1/3 more to get a shofar shal ayil. Now we continue in the Mechaber, second line from the bottom by the Ois Kat and Vav for the Mishnah Berurah. V'shel para, how about the horn of a cow or an ox? That, the Mechaber says, pasal b'chol gavna. That is pasal for Tekiyah Shofar, whether it's bent, whether it's straight, it doesn't matter what it is. The horn of a cow or of an ox is pasal for Tekiyah Shofar. Says the Mishnah Berurah Kat and Vav, shel para, the horn of a cow, v'adin shar, or of an ox, v'atam, and the reason is, memnei shenikru keren, because that horn is called a horn, it's called a keren, v'loy shofar, it's not called a shofar. So since it's not a shofar, you can't use it for Tekiyah Shofar. Continues the Mechaber, bottom line, v'chein karnei roiv hachayis, the horns of most non-domesticated animals are not kosher for Tekiyah Shofar. Why? Shehem etzem echad, because they are one bone, they're one piece through and through. Ve'ein lahem mi bifnim zachrus, they don't have a separate piece that is inserted inside the outside layer, and therefore psulim, therefore they are pasal. And the Ramah says, let's just finish this sif, v'chein shofar b'mehemet tamei pasal, and also the horn or a shofar of a non-kosher animal is also pasal for Tekiyah Shofar. This is brought down from the Ran in Masechtas Rosh Hashanah. Okay, so the Mechaber said over here 3 things. He said that the horn of a cow is pasal because that's not called a shofar. That's called a keren. The horn of most non-domesticated animals are puzzle. Why? Because they're one piece through and through. As opposed to a shofar, like a shofar shel ayil, there's an outside bone, and then there's cartilage that's inside that outside bone that we remove in order to make a hollow shofar. But not most non-domesticated animals are one piece of bone through and through. It's not a separate piece inside that we remove. If you want to hollow it out, you could drill it out and hollow it out. But it's all one piece of bone through and through. And that's not what we want for a shofar, and we'll see why in the Mishnah Berurah. And lastly, the Ramah said over here that the horn of a behemoth tameya, of a non-kosher animal, is puzzle for Tekiah shofar. Says the Chavetz Chaim in Ois Katan Zayin, V'chein karnei roiv hachayas, the horn of most non-domesticated animals are puzzle for Tekiah shofar. Kemoi, for example, hare'emim, for example, the horn of a re'em. What exactly is a re'em? I don't remember what a re'em is. It's not a ram. An ayil is a ram. A re'em, is a re'em a mountain goat? Let me see if I could tell you very, very quickly. Hang on 1 second. 1 second. A re'em. Bear with me. Aim. I never heard of this animal. An oryx. Oryx. Never heard of it. 1 second. What's an oryx? What's an oryx? Ah, an antelope. Okay, an antelope. Well, an antelope would be a problem anyway. I don't know if an antelope is a kosher animal. Okay, I'm not sure. I have to identify re'em. I know how to find out. Okay, so in any case, let's go back here. Ois Katan Zayin. My stream's still going? Yes, it is. Okay, let's go back here. Ois Katan Zayin. K'may hare'emim v'hatzvayim v'chadoyim. A tzvi is a deer. So the horns of most of these animals are puzzled for Tekiah shofar because they're not hollow. They're one piece through and through. Upsul shelahem. What is their disqualifying feature? Misham de shofar tzarech liyos chalul. Because a shofar has to be hollow. The shofar hu melushon shfoiferes. Because the word shofar is related, it has the same root as shfoiferes. A shfoiferes is a tube, a hollow tube. Upsulim elu de para ude etzem echad. These two disqualifying factors that the Mechaber just mentioned, the disqualifying factor of a cow, which is that it's not called a shofar, and the disqualifying factor of these non-domesticated animals that are not hollow, hum min HaTorah. This is a psol midaraisa. These types of horns are puzzle v'tkiyah shofar min HaTorah. And therefore, says the Chavetz Chaim, va'afilu ein lo shofar acher. Therefore, even if you have no other shofar, ein liskaya behem. You should not blow shofar in the horn of a cow or in the horn of a non-domesticated animal like a deer, which is not hollow, and you're just drilling it out. They're puzzle min HaTorah. Ois katleches v'chein shofar min behemoth tameya. And so too the Ramah said the horn of a non-kosher animal is disqualified, is puzzle for Tekiah shofar. We have a similar psul we have by tefillin. You're not allowed to use the hides of non-kosher animals in order to fashion tefillin or to write tefillin. You can't do that. It's puzzle. The Kasva Achronim, however, the Achronim write. Now let's take a look. Before I even read further, I'll just tell you the lashon of the Shulchan Aruch Harav. The Shulchan Aruch Harav says, shofar mi behemoth tameya, the shofar of a non-kosher animal, yesh lepaislai afilu b'di'eved, is pasal afilu b'di'eved, like the Mishnah Berurah just said about a cow. Even b'di'eved, even if you don't have anything else, You can't blow in the shofar of a non-kosher animal. Because for Melecha Shamayim, for Avodas Hashem, you have to use a kosher animal. You can't use a treifa animal. So says the Shulchan Aruch Harav. But now the Mishnah Berurah brings down here, the Kasvu Achronim, the Achronim write, She'ein din zeh barur. This din is not so clear that you have to use a kosher animal. And the Chavetz Chaim writes in the Shar Tzion, Ois Kat Yud Daled, he says, Ayin be'Eliyah Rabbah, take a look at the Eliyah Rabbah, u'bebirke Yosef, u'sha'arei Achronim, in other Achronim as well, v'gam haran atzmai, and even a Rishon, even the Ran, mistapik bazeh, he also had a suffix about this, whether or not you must use the horn of a kosher animal. What's the question? So if you remember, the Mishnah Berurah just said that this halacha, that you have to use the horn of a kosher animal, is related to the halacha that you have to use the hide of a kosher animal for tefillin. But says the Shari Tzion, Mishum de Efsher, Lefia Maskana, it could be that according to the conclusion of the Gemara, time of the tefillin, the reason why you have to use a kosher animal by tefillin is Mishum Laman Tietar Hashem Beficha, because we darshan from the pasuk says that Laman, you should wear tefillin so that Tihiyat Torah Hashem Beficha, so that you should always have the words of Torah in your mouth. And therefore we darshan that the tefillin have to be made out of something that you're allowed to eat. It has to be made from a kosher animal. But that has nothing to do with shofar. Shu tashmishe mitzvah balma. Shofar is just a tashmish mitzvah. It's something that you use to do a mitzvah, but we don't have a pasuk of Laman Tietar Hashem Beficha. The pasuk of Laman Tietar Hashem Beficha has no relation to shofar. So therefore, where do we get this halacha from? So these achronim in the Ran, they say they're not so certain that this psul, that you have to, that it has to be the shofar of a kosher animal. That's not such a clear halacha. Therefore, continues the Chavetz Chaim in the Mishnah Berurah, and he says, "Well, lahachi, therefore, im ein lo shofar acher. If you don't have any other shofar, you only have the shofar of a non-kosher animal. Yiskabay, you should blow in it. Achein, however, lo yavarich alav, blow without making a bracha. Deshemu hu pasal bidina, because it is possible that it really is pasal. And then if later on in Rosh Hashanah you get the shofar of a kosher animal, then blow over again. The gam can blow bracha, but again, blow without a bracha. Because it's possible that you worry yaitza with your original blowing in the horn of a non-kosher animal. However, everyone agrees, shofar shel nevela utreifa, that the shofar of a nevela, let's say you have a shofar shel ayil, but the ayil was not shechted properly. The ayil, somebody shot it with a bow and arrow. So it's a nevela, it's a treifa. That's kosher l'skayabay. That is kosher for tekiyah shofar, according to all. Okay, we'll stop over here. Mr. Hashem, next time we'll pick up with Sif Beis. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The schus of limud HaTorah should be megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rabban Shem should send Yeshua's refuahs and parnasa to all those in need, and we should be zeichet to see the Bias Gal Tzedek b'meher v'yameinu. Amen. Be well.